Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us at Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting number 15, July 4th, 2024. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that this meeting is being held on an unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabes Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. I also like to acknowledge that we have a full gallery here today. We have lots of city staff, and also I have my Lions colleague and club member from the Greeley all the way to be here at our meeting, Dave Agate, and welcome this morning, both of you and my friend, for here this morning to joining us at that meeting. I know it's a long way from Greeley. I'll ask Kelly to do a roll call, please.
Counselor Brown,
Here.
Counselor Kitts,
Here.
Counselor Luloff,
Hello.
Vice Chair Kelly,
Present.
Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone, again. I will read my chair's statement. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as item 4.3 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those specifically identified in the Planning Act who make oral submission today or written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the Ontario Land Tribunal if Council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of the recipient of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit a written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by Council on July 10, 2024, please email or call the committee or Council coordinator. Any declaration of interest? Seeing none. Thank you. Confirmation 3.1, ARAC minutes 14, meeting 14, Thursday, June 5th, 2024. Or is it 5th or 6th? 6th. Sorry, 6th. Is that carried?
Confirmed. Carried.
Thank you. So we do have, on 4.1, we have a presentation and we have a staff here, which is, we'll hear from them momentarily, but I like to clear the agenda first so we can give enough time to some other department to go back and we release them from the meeting. So we'll do the clearing and we'll hold number 4.1. 4.2, it's Rural Community Building Grant Program, Grant Review, and staff is on it. Ryan Thompson, if we have any question, the report recommend that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee approve the recommendation on the Rural Community Building Grants Program application as detailed in document 1. Anyone have a question? Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. That item is carried. We move to 4.3, and this is a zoning bylaw amendment, part 2824. Goodson Road. We do have staff on hand if we have question, and Jaspreet Brar, it's her first meeting at Agricultural Affairs Committee. Welcome to the City of Ottawa team, and we're happy to have you here this morning. The recommendation that the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee recommend Council approve an amendment to zoning bylaw 2008 to 250 for part of 2024 Goodstown Road as shown in document 1 to prohibit the residential development on retained land as detailed in document 2. And to the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, approve the Constitution details section of this report be included as a part of the report. Any question? Is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you. That's also carried. Thank you very much, Jaspreet. 5.1, and I'll mention it because this one was withdrawn for the wetland omnibus official plan because the public consultation and the distribution for the notification for that meeting was not done properly. So we're gonna wait and hold it till September meeting. 6.1, we have a Cassidy Municipal Drain reappointment for engineer. There is no presentation, no delegation, no correspondence, and of course, we have Dave Ryan on the line if we have any question. A report recommendation that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council appoint Mr. Andy Robinson, engineer, Robinson Consultant, Inc., as the engineer of record to prepare a report under Section 78.1 of the Drainage Act to inform council on the current status of the Cassidy Municipal Drain and whether one of them or more of the project listed under subsection 78.1.1 is required for better use, maintenance, or repair of the drainage works or lands or roads. And two, sections 8-1 of the Drainage Act in response to petition received under section 4 of the Drainage Act as described in this report. Anyone have a question? Is that carried?
Carried.
Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave. I think.
Yep.
Oh, we have another one, 6.2, and that's also for another municipal drain, Quail. They're both in Osgood ward, my ward. There is no presentation, no delegation, no correspondence, and the recommendation that the Agricultural Rural Affairs Committee recommend that council receive the memo regarding the Quinn branch of the Quail Municipal Drain under Section 65 of the Drainage Act for information. And two, approve Mr. Andy Robinson, engineer at Robinson Consultant, Inc., under Section 78 of the Drainage Act to prepare a new report to accommodate the land use and drainage boundary changes within the existing Quail Municipal Drainage area. Any question? And seeing none, is that carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much, and that's carried. And now Dave, Mr. Ryan can go back to work. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We have additional item, and this is from Councillor Brown concerning speed limit coherence through Ashton Station Road, and we have suspension of rules and full motion. Councillor Brown, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Colleagues will recall that this was withdrawn a few meetings ago to give staff more time to do the necessary research and draft a corresponding bylaw. Both municipalities require a bylaw on a boundary road to reduce the speed limit. I'll just read the therefore be it resolved clauses. Nothing has changed substantially since our last meeting. Therefore, be it resolved that the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee recommend council approve that staff be directed to draft a bylaw identical to that drafted by the Township of Beckwith that would enable the implementation of a 40-kilometer-an-hour posted speed limit on Ashton Station Road from Ormrod Road to Beckwith 9th Line Road.
Thank you. Any question? Can we have a carry on the suspension of the rules?
Carried.
Thank you. And on the motion?
Carried.
That's carried. We will back to our first item, 4.1, I think.
Yes.
And we do have there we go. So we do have Lorraine Stevens this morning. Thank you very much for coming to do presentation to us. You can introduce your team member in a moment. And we do have, before we start the presentation, we have a technical motion. Bear with me here. I think Councillor Brown will introduce a technical motion on that item.
Thank you very much, Chair. Whereas there are numerical errors in Report 4.1, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022, Rural Residential Land Survey, the report, and Document 1, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022, Rural Residential Land Survey Report, Document 1. And whereas these errors relate to the number of housing starts from mid-2020 to mid-2022 and the projected year's supply in rural villages, therefore be it resolved that the third paragraph on page 5 of the report be amended as follows, as outlined in the motion. And be it further resolved that the last paragraph on page 19 and the second last paragraph on page 20 of document 1 be amended as follows, as outlined in the motion. And be it further resolved that the that table supply in villages based on unit potential, June 30th, 2022, on page 5 of the report and table 4 in document 1 be replaced with the table attached to this motion and on file with the city clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. And we have a presentation. Lauren, go ahead. Thank you very much for being here.
Good morning, everyone. I also have my colleague Eva Walland with me if anyone has any questions that I'm unable to answer. So I'm here to speak to the mid-2020 to mid-2022 Rural Residential Land Survey, also referred to as the RILS. Next slide, please. This edition of the RILS is the first to consider the policies of the new official plan. The RILS monitors the creation of new lots, rural housing starts, and estimates the rural residential supply. Next slide. As of June 2022, the potential rural housing supply was almost 11,000 units. Almost 1,400 of the potential units were on registered lots and ready for a building permit to allow construction. Over 6,000 were next in the queue with in-process development review applications. And in addition, there are land zoned for residential development for a potential of over 3,000 units. Next slide. The official plan directs the focus of rural growth to be in the villages with a target of 71%. We are exceeding that target with 80% of growth potential in the villages. Next slide. The official plan also requires that there be a 15-year supply of lands for rural residential development. The official plan also directs that most of that development be directed to the villages that have municipal services, being Richmond, Manotick, Greeley, and Carp. For these villages, we have a potential 23-year supply. For the remaining villages, we have a potential 38-year supply. In summary, at this point, there's not a need to expand our village boundaries to accommodate growth. Next slide. For reference, this map shows each village with its number of potential dwelling units and years of supply, based on the 4-year average of housing starts for each of those villages. Please note where the years of supply indicate 0, it is because in the 4 years for which the average was taken, there was 0 housing starts. Therefore, the number of years is unknown based on recent projections, but it is anticipated to be 25 plus years. The one exception is Munster, which has 0 potential for future lots outside of a severance application. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Lauren. I think we have questions. I think we'll start with Councillor Kidd.
I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but I think what concerns me about what we're seeing is that while growth is directed to villages, it's not sort of equitable across the city. So we're seeing tremendous growth in Richmond and Manotick, Greeley as well, and then really stagnant growth in other villages, such as Navan, for example. And my concern is that without a moderate growth in those areas, villages will stagnate and we will lose our local businesses, schools will close. We've seen that, at villages like Sarsfield where the school closed. And that's a concern. I realize that that's more of an official plan conversation, but it was a concern for me when we reviewed the official plan, and it's still a concern for me now. So I don't know if there's a question in there, or if you could speak to sort of why there isn't more growth happening elsewhere, or if that's something that your team looks at in any way to see, if there are opportunities for growth in other villages where there's not an opportunity today.
We typically look at the villages as a group with the separation between villages that have municipal services and villages that don't. And the official plan directs for most of that village growth to be in those service villages because that's the most economical direction to go. However, there's in all the villages except for Munster, there are lands available and lots actually with registered lots ready for a building permit. So we don't have the ability to tell the development industry where to direct their growth, but the potential is there. It's just whether developers want to tap into it.
Thank you, Councilor Kidd and Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. In terms of expanding village boundaries, when we have all of this targeted growth in a few of the villages that the city has, when it does come time to review the potential expanding village boundaries, is it done on a village to village basis, or do we expand all of the boundaries of all of the villages at once?
My understanding is that we treat them as a unit. So if we are going to expand the village boundaries, we would look at where it makes sense. And that could mean some villages expand the boundaries and others not. There isn't a balanced approach in terms of expanding the boundaries.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm not sure if this is a question I should pose to you and your team or someone else offline. But when we look at the growth potential and the number of years of land reserve in these villages, the growth we're seeing now is densely packed, very different from how villages have grown in the past. Is that type of land supply factored into the number of units being constructed in there? Because a 1 acre lot takes up more space than a 34 width lot in some of these high growth development areas. So when we look at that reserve land supply, is that calculated in, or do we just base it on housing starts in the villages?
Eva may be able to speak to this better than I, but what I can say is that there are different factors based on how development is going forward. So when we estimate development potential, it depends on whether there's services in the villages or not, which impacts the area, the average lot size. And then we also turn to our community design plans and other development plans that to give us the best estimate of the size of lots that are being created in those villages.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. We'll move to Councilor Lulaf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I represent a village very similar to Navins that Councillor Kitts was mentioning, Cumberland Village, which has been seeing that sort of stagnant growth, alternate uses for what was a school there as well. And in speaking with the people that are really interested in growth and providing more services in that village, which may make it more viable, they're finding it very difficult. You know, because of some of the zoning and because of some of the restrictions with regards to things like because it's not serviced by the city, because of limitations due to our regulations when it comes to septic systems. Over the course of the last 25 years, there have been great technological advances in septic technology and on-site processing of waste and that sort of thing. For example, we've got one site that's zoned and would allow something like a landscaping company or a hardware store. However, the owner is really interested in putting in a small pharmacy that would serve the village, and with an aging population, naturally, because we're not seeing that sort of turnover and growth in the village, something like that would make a lot of sense. But because of our regulations, they won't allow us or won't allow that owner to build that. Are we taking into consideration in some of these villages that are not serviced by city services some of that advancement in technology that might allow for different uses and perhaps more growth in those villages that are unserviced by the city?
I'd say that your questions, Councillor, are outside this report. And in terms of answering your question, I don't think I'm the best one suited. Perhaps Royce would be able to answer your questions better than I.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair, I think in terms of if there is an application, it would be through the development application process where if a proponent wanted to amend the minimum lot sizes that we have for privately serviced lots, they would be able to provide some information on why a lot could be smaller and still provide the safety, the public safety that we seek to separate septic from the groundwater system. So that process exists to look at those if those technologies are suitable for a particular location.
Okay, that's not really what I was asking, but we can follow up offline. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Rudolph, and thank you, Royce. I do have a question, and then if you look at the report, I probably directed probably to Royce or I see Derek Moody is on the line with us this morning. I think probably the question will be, if you look at the report, it sees that most of the land we have, it's on the north and the northwest. If we look at a citywide and rural perspective, I don't think there is balance in land supply. Am I reading this right? Or if you look at Greeley per se, or you look at Cumberland area in the east end, and you look at in the Richmond and Richmond and Manatic, I see the supply is more. So are we really driving the development industry to only go into one area because we are really stopping the growth in other villages? And that's what it's creating to myself. If you look at some villages in the rural area, and you can't say all the villages look the same because each one of them has a different unique characterism. If you look at Richmond are different than Manatic different than Greeley different than Osgood different than Bars and other area. So are we looking at the balance in the whole rural area, or we're just looking in specific area? And I understand you're gonna tell me, yes, we do have enough supply citywide, but am I asking you, my question is, do we have enough sufficient supply across the board in the rural area?
So, Chair, as the report has concluded, there is sufficient supply across the rural area, both within villages and outside of villages. The draw to the growth for the villages is really drawn by those villages that have the services, and that really creates sort of when a village has services, it creates an imbalance versus a village that doesn't have services. So that's why we see the largest villages is the draw for that growth, and will continue to be the draw for the growth. We can certainly, through the next official plan review, look at an area approach. However, we do have villages that came to us from amalgamation. We do have villages that have supply. So that's one thing we could look at, is to see how that supply can be further used for housing. But as Lorraine had indicated earlier, a lot of that comes from the landowners, and when they're ready to move on using that supply.
Thank you for the answer. I understand and I appreciate your answer, but my really concern, and not only myself, and I'm going to leave this topic, probably I'm going to make some comments on it, but I'm going to also leave it to the Rural Summit, because we've been going around and talking to the resident in the Rural Summit, and we're understanding this. It's consistent. We can hear it from our rural resident. We're not telling you open up the floodgate, and we're not talking about let's put a house in every corner, but resident, they want to move to rural area, they want to have the choices, and they want to be able to say where they want to move, and where the developer want to build. Not it's what we're telling them where they want to build. But these conversations, I'm sure it will be coming in the future. That's what we've been hearing throughout our Rural Summit. But before I close my comment, I'm going to let Councillor Kit ask her question.
Thank you, Chair. It's similar to my first question, but perhaps better suited to you, Royce. I think it would be prudent to look at villages across the city in the next official plan update. But I guess my question is what the concern we're expressing today, where all of the growth for the rural area is being concentrated in 1 or 2 or 3 villages, is that a concern on the staff side as well? Like when you're thinking about making villages a 15-minute community. We know that there's, generational turnover that happens. We've seen examples of villages like Sarsfield lose their school, or, a community, a rural village lose their bank. And that leaves a big void in sort of that 15-minute ideal. Is that something that on the staff side, there's a concern, and something that, we could maybe better look at going forward?
I think, Chair, the official plan clearly directs the bulk of the growth to those service villages like Richmond, Manotick, or Carp. I think the point that the councillor raises is completely valid from an economic development perspective. Those other villages are allocated or anticipated to see some growth as well, though albeit not at the same scale as the service villages. And it is important for those villages to have the opportunity to grow. I think if we look at some of it, and I think what the finding of this report is that all of the villages do have land available within them to grow. And one that I'll point to as an example, village of Kenmore. I don't think we would categorize it as a high growth area, but there's well over 50 acres of land available in the village of boundary of Kenmore that could be developed if there was, a market, a market demand for it, or property owners that were, looking to advance that development opportunity. And I think that's where some of that challenge lies, is that there is land in the villages that could be developed, but for various reasons, and it could be, the property owners have different interests. They may still be interested in farming the land as opposed to developing it. There may not be a significant market demand in some of our villages as we get sometimes further out from the city core. Those lands aren't advancing in some of those villages, and it is a concern for sure that if they stagnate too long, we do see that reduction in services, and we do see that reduction in overall interest in that. It gets harder to get that momentum going in some of those communities if they stagnate for too long.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I'm usually talking about how fast my community is growing. So two hats today, but appreciate those responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kit. So since we're on that topic, an official plan, remind me if I'm correct, Royce, didn't we have a language concerning carp and greeley in this official plan, and we're supposed to do work that it's been done already, and there's some language included in this official plan?
Sorry, Chair, could you just clarify, are you asking if the official plan has specific wording with regards to the 4 largest villages, or is it in regards to something more specific to a review?
So something more specific in greeley and carp. I know there is a language was provided in this official plan to look at those villages. Am I correct on that one, or?
So if there's nothing in the official plan that speaks to reviewing those villages, however, as part of the official plan review, as part of the work plan that the department put forth for this term of council, our branch, our department will be undertaking a review of the village plans in 2025.
Thank you. And to add to comments what I hear from my council colleague, and I know that Councillor Kit hit a little bit about it. I mean, we don't always have to be reactive. So it's good the city of Ottawa to be a little bit more proactive. We're looking, since COVID, people really want to move and come live in rural villages and rural area. But if you look at what's happening in rural villages, we can see the services is declining, from banks, from doctors, dentists, whatever you want. Like, we're preaching about 15-minute community, but yet we're not trying to cater and deliver services. And I think basically, I'm not saying the city failed the rural resident, but I'm thinking we're not really proactively, our official plan is not really delivering and catering for what is our villages changes since COVID. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I'm not blaming things at the official plan. Before COVID, things was different. And after COVID, we're actually, our official plan is not reacting to what's in reality happening right now in rural villages. So we've seen declining in services, we've seen declining in amenity, and but yet we don't see people want to move to rural area, but they don't have the ability because of the processes. And this is a common, I'm just generally what we're hearing, and I'm bringing it to your attention and bring it today because we have that report on front of us, and I think it's an opportunity for rural resident and the rural communities to come together as rural council through our rural summit and then hearing more. So we're encouraging the people and the residents to really come out to those event and rural summit that we're doing. But I also want to make it I want to make sure staff hearing us and highlighting that what you're hearing today from councilors, it will be coming soon to the table. And I'm hoping if it's going to be another round for our official plan to wait, but at least we need to prepare that work ahead and planting the seed. So I want to make sure we're delivering and catering to rural residents and rural areas, balancing the need in every rural village, not only one. And if you to comment on the rural villages, and I understand, Mr. Moody, you brought a Kenmore per se, and if you look at the villages, you look at in Osgood, I said it and I say it every time, they're not all the same. You gotta look at them and keep the rural characterism inside them, but also we wanna make sure they're not declining for services. People in the rural area, they don't wanna go to Barhaven every day to shop. So we need to kind of cater to them some kind of services, and they don't lose even the services that they have today. That's what we've seen in rural villages. In my ward, in Councillor Kitt's ward, and every rural councillor, they can tell you the same thing. So I'm hoping our message is coming loud and clear to the city staff to say, hey, okay, we need to start giving some attention to rural villages, and we always say the cookie, one size doesn't fit all. And we need to look at all our villages to give them fair shot to making sure they be vibrant, like we keep talking about our rural villages are vibrant. So this is my comment for this morning for that report. I hope I appreciate the presentation and I appreciate the questions and answer, but I want to make sure, put it on record, our rural residents, that's what they've been telling us, and this is their voice is coming through Agricultural Effort Committee to let staff knows what we're looking for. Thank you. So we have, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We do have a motion, technical motion. Is that carried?
Carried.
And we can receive the report as amended.
Received.
Thank you. We go back to, I think our agenda item is almost done. We go back to the 7. There is no in-camera items. 8, we have a IPD that been delivered to us through our from Councillor Clark Kelly. And we do have item number 9. We have open mic session, and we have John Hendricks and Jane Patterson from Small Flock, Ontario, to share with us some presentation. We'll give them a few minutes to come to the front and then share the presentation with us. We usually give 5 minutes, but because you coming all the way from Russell and all the way from Osgood Ward, John, we're going to give you 10 minutes, 5 each. So we'll give you a few minutes to wrap and to set up.
I'd like to thank George for inviting myself and John here today. Small Flock Ontario started on April 1st, 2023. And this is a project that was a 2-year project and funding for just 2 years. And it will end on April 1st, 2025, unless there is further funding. Currently, it's funded by the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Poultry Industry Council, OMAFRA, and the federal government. In Ontario, there are over 25,000 small flock producers that are currently registered and many that are not registered. There are 2,000 commercial flocks, and what they were finding was that the commercial flocks get all of the information and have a huge support group through the industry. and are aware of where and when avian influenza is hitting and any of the other diseases. But the small flock owners were left in the dark. So since it's virtually impossible to visit all the small flock producers, we're reaching out by visiting feed dealers, attending farm shows, attending fairs, and visiting municipalities. So our goals are to educate as many people as possible on how to protect their flocks from diseases, primarily avian influenza. So we're encouraging everyone to sign up for our newsletter, which provides information on all our poultry diseases and location of outbreaks across Ontario. So by attending some of these places like the farm show, we had people sign up to the newsletter, and they get updates on what's going on. So we also handed out several backpacks while we were at the farm show. And so it's just something to kind of help people. It's a disinfectant to clean their barns, proper disinfectant with boots, and just trying to teach people biosecurity and how to keep a healthy flock. So we had a webinar earlier in the spring to bylaw officers in Eastern Ontario. And we're trying to have another one in the fall before migration happens. So just so everyone knows is that avian influenza it comes from wild ducks and geese. It doesn't come from a residential flock. It only comes from the wild. John and I are case officers, and so we're here to assist small flock owners in the case of an outbreak. And we would be able to support them. CFIA would be coming in and disposing of their birds, but we would be available to assist them and guide them through the process. And there are phone numbers that you can contact, like for dead birds or wildlife. It's the Canadian Wildlife Health Cooperative. And if you have a domestic birds with a disease, you'd contact in this case, the Ottawa District CFIA office. So I have their numbers here, and I provided the counselors with that information. And now I'll let John explain a little bit about segregation and biosecurity. And then after that, if you have any questions, we can answer them or try to answer them.
Yes. Oh, I guess I should push a button. There we go. So I guess I'm one of these small flock guys. I got like chickens and ducks and geese and guineas and all kind of stuff at my place. And since joining the small flock, I've changed kind of a lot of little things at my place. But one of the biggest things is your birds, where you're getting your birds from. You know, that's probably the most important thing. Bird movement, like, you know, if you're, I mean, Jane just informed me of this before, but about bird auctions. Bird auctions is probably one of the worst places somebody can go and buy a bird, because you're getting a whole bunch of birds coming from a whole bunch of different places, all into one area. There's maybe 30, 40, 50 different places these birds are coming from. So if there's one sickness somewhere, by the time these birds are heading home to your place, they probably pick something up, and you won't notice it maybe for the first day or two, but you know, eventually you're going to probably see something. Well, not eventually, but sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. If you're lucky, you don't. But I think for the most part, we have to be very careful where we're getting our birds from. Like George says, he gets his stuff from the co-op. Everything comes from co-op. If you got one source where you're getting all your stuff from, you're probably always going to be safe. But it's bird movement and the way you're taking care of your birds too. Like if you're letting your birds run, having a little bit too much freedom. You know, I mean, my place this spring, I had Canada geese coming within 25 feet of my barns. And that's not a good thing. So I had my birds fenced in more than I ever have before, because I don't want them getting in contact with these geese that are running around in my fields. But we're all about just educating everybody, you know, all the little biosecurity measures, keeping your coops clean, keeping, you know, like sole source buying your chickens from, and even fairs. If you're going to bird auctions or bird sales, like or the bird shows at fairs, be careful who's coming into your place. You know, people coming in to your barns or even yourself coming in, if your barn's not the cleanest, you're tracking stuff in and out, you're carrying stuff on your shoes and maybe into your vehicle, you know, it's all these little things. We take it all for granted, but really in the end, it does make a difference. It's maybe just a little thing, but that little thing could maybe infect somebody else's flock and maybe you don't see it in yours, but it could cause something in somebody else's birds. So we're just all about, we're not the police, like we can't force anybody to do anything, but what we just want to educate everybody as much as we can and all the little things they can do to keep keep all the birds safe, and then the less avian flu that's around the area, the better for everybody. And that's what we're trying to do. And we're visiting as many feed mills as we can. I think we've covered from the Quebec border all the way to Cobourg, Jane and I, for feed mills. And so we've done a big job of Ontario, just the two of us already. So, and we're just like, it's an education thing, but biosecurity for farmers is probably the most important thing to keep all the birds safe in the area. So.
Is there any questions?
Thank you very much for the good presentation. And I know that bring lots of information to us this morning. I know there is concern in the rural area, specifically in small flock, and we will appreciate you take the time this morning to come here and share those information with us. I know that Farmer Brown have a question for you, so.
Okay.
He's
you
a
very
chicken
much, Chair.
farmer, by the way.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Jane and John, for the presentation. I think it's fantastic that you've come out today, and I wish more of our urban colleagues were here so they can hear the, I guess, the diverse issues that Ottawa City Council and its committees hear. Through the updated zoning bylaw that the city is working through right now, one of the things that we're doing is reducing the restrictions for backyard chickens in the city of Ottawa. I don't think we're going to see it in the highly urbanized area, but we are certainly going to see it on lots that have that size to accommodate birds. Have you been able to work with our bylaw officers here in the city of Ottawa to help develop an education plan that we can share?
No, we have not.
Okay, so that's probably something that we can help with here at this committee. And I know you have a lot of information. You've been generous and provided us with some of that and some takeaways. But is there a way that you could send us some information that each of the rural councillors could share on our networks?
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to speak with my colleagues at Small Flock Ontario, and there is a ton of information that is available on our website that you can print off. And there's webinars happening all the time that people can go on and attend. So that's what we're hoping to have for your officers in the fall, is to have them join a webinar. But in the meantime, all of this information is available on the website, and even after April 1st, 2025, if there isn't any more funding, that information will always be there. And you can email them and you can ask questions, and it will get back to you. But certainly we can work together with your bylaw officers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I also want to say that, Ottawa is blessed to have 5 fairs in our area. And I think it's great that you're going out to those. And personal plug, or, a biased plug, Richmond Fair is the best fair, also the oldest fair in the city of Ottawa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. We probably agree to disagree on that one, but like you mentioned, all fairs are great, and we're happy to see you and hear that you'll be presented. Also, if you have some information or some news, I also encourage you to send it to the Rural Council or send it to myself, because we do have newsletters that's not related or plugged to the city's website. We can send it to our constituents separately. So each council will have a newsletter, and we have our media outlet, and we have our social media. We can put them on. We can help you. We also do lots of community event, and we've been trying to share those events with you, hopefully that you can come out and have an opportunity to talk to the residents in rural areas. So, but I really appreciate your being here this morning. We thank you very much for your information. I know John and I have been meeting couple times concerning small flock, and then it's a very educational, and hopefully you get the funding for next year, because this is a very good program and we're very educational for our rural residents. So thank you very much, both of you, for being here this morning with us.
Thank you.
I think we're We have no notice or motions for consideration for another meeting. We have no inquiry. I don't think we have any other business other than we can mention this is our probably last meeting before we break the summer, and then our next meeting will be in September. But I also want to highlight and mention to thank you all for being here this morning. I know my friends from Greeley, Dave Agate and Paul Alford took time today to be here with us because we have special presentation for few people in our communities after the meeting here. But I want to wish you all to have a great and safe summer. Hopefully you'll enjoy the activity and you'll enjoy our city in the summer. So thank you very much for being here. And I see no one's have any comment, and I have the mic. So our next meeting, like I mentioned, is September 5th, 2024, and we'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for being here. Enjoy your summer.